Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I got a treat for you. This is an oldie. Hey guys, welcome back to this channel on this really cold stretch in January where a customer dropped off 4 above zero their 1950 Jeepster today. We're going to be replacing excuse me, the complete wiring harness on this baby today, like complete. So 6-volt system, he wants to keep it a 6-volt system. It's from Kaser Willys, the Jeep harness, customer supplied it. That everything's gonna go smooth. But let me show you what we're dealing with. A little out of my element on this thing because I'm dealing with a 6-volt system. It's literally got manual start, like you push a lever and on the floor to engage the starter. 3 in the tree, manual transmission, all this stuff is like, whoa. But this is the reason why we're doing the harness. If you look at the insulation on every wire, every connection, it's literally the old like fiberglass insulation where it just deteriorated over time. This vehicle's 75 years old. Essentially, it just falls apart. So we've got a couple of old schematics I found, aren't very helpful. They don't give wire colors. However, Kaser Willys does give us a really good, or it appears to be a good description of wire colors that they used and where they go. Now, routing and everything else, there's not a lot, obviously there's not a lot to these cars, there's no electronics, but getting the stuff is still gonna be a challenge, as well as trying to get to the back of the gauges. Everything is old, like like an eyelet and a screw. I mean, it's just old school. So you gotta be careful, you gotta take your time. This project's gonna take a while. We'll do some highlights and stuff that we're doing on the harness. But for now, I'm just getting a feel for the car. I'm looking at where things are, how the wires are run, where they're run, all that stuff. Keep in mind, being as old as it is, things aren't just gonna go smooth. So we anticipate some hiccups along the way. Yeah, let's see what we got. All right, first things first, I didn't know like the main, so we went ahead and pulled out some of the windows and or like canvas. This is a Jeep, by the way. Got those out of our way. I was gonna put the top down, but I think it's gonna block, or at least the customer said it'll block our access to the rear lights. He already popped off the lenses because I believe we're gonna have to probably get into there as well. But on first sight here, it looks like the wiring harness in this floor, like, whoo, it's so brittle. Like, look at this. This is rubber. Yeah. So he's gonna be putting new mats in here. So I suggested some POR 15, repaint the whole floor on it, and then put his new rubber mats in after. But if you can see the harness there, it looks like it dips down below the vehicle. So I am going to have to find a way to put this thing up on the lift. Hopefully we can do that without too much trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, see if I can't find some spots to get this thing up on the lift. All right, take a minute real quick here to talk about their harness from Kaser Willys. And actually, I thought it was like one piece. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be a nightmare. It's actually like 4 or 5 different sections of harness. So I assume like a headlight section, a taillight section, the main vehicle harness to the gate. I don't know, but it appears that it's going to be that way. At first glance as well, I've never used one of their harnesses, but they kept that OEM look with that like fiberglass type of insulation on there. Of course, now it's color coded, and they have a lot of good chafing on there as well. So that's good as well. Now, I guess you can see is everything's ringlet, like little screws, except for the headlights. That's obviously got to be a headlight. So at least that one might not be bad. And I might start there. I might start here and work my way back. I'm not sure. This is kind of new territory for me. All right, so baby steps. Let's ease into this. I'm going to start with the left driver's headlight harness. Basically 3 wires. We have a ground, a high beam, and a low beam. And where it goes, and this is not a direct how-to, so it's not about that. It's just the adventure of putting an old harness in an old vehicle. Is the plug must be under this, so we'll have to get at this somehow. And then it goes to this really nasty old terminal block, and then the ground must go to a common ground, which I'm not seeing one off of this factory harness, so we'll have to initiate a ground on here. We're gonna have to get at the harness from this side here, and it appears I've located our ground. So that's good there. We don't have to put an extra ground on here. So that was grounded. It's just they did it inside the housing here. So that's cool. All right, here is the left side headlight wiring harness. And as you can see, with all the bare copper showing, it's kind of surprising there hasn't been a fire of some sort on this car, because this is the way it is all through everything. It's just getting those wires through the old rubber grommet was a challenge, but we lubed it up, we got them out, And here's our low beam attachment point, and our high beam is down there. We got them actually off. So now we're gonna run the new harness through there, and we got one little harness done. That's a win. It's a little win, but it's still a win. All right, the left side or driver's side wiring harness for this light is in. We got our ground here. We got our low beam and high beam attached down there. They're just temporary right now because we got to take these on and off a few times. But one other thing I'm going to do, and it's a good habit to do it, is your dielectric grease on your spade connectors on the back of this headlight here. I'm going to put a little dab of grease on each one of these. We'll put this headlight back in. We'll go over here and work this one, which routes down in front of the radiator back to this block as well. And we'll start on that one. I also saw that there's a couple additional wires that aren't factory, so that's where you run into a challenge. All right, now that we get the driver's side done, the passenger side, we got a few more wires involved in this one because basically what it is where it runs in front of the radiator. We got these two additional connectors here that we're going to be tying into and replacing the park light as well. So the park light and headlight will run together over to here and tie into this terminal block. So here we go. All right, right into our first problem, or challenge I should say. Running the headlight park light harness from the right side to the left. It's kind of hard to get to. We got to basically move a piece of the radiator shroud to get to it, and that's where a lot of this time comes in. The second thing we notice is it comes with plugs on the end for the park lights, which plug in right next to the light. However, it does not come with a new socket like the actual park light blinker side of the harness, which means we're either gonna have to make something, talk to the customer, or he's gonna have to buy those separately, and they probably have them. And I'm assuming the rear are gonna be the same way, but the main harness will be there. So we'll get to that. We'll get that figured out because that's minor at the end of it. You could do that later. It's a small little repair. All right, we're up on the lift now. In order to run this harness and make our lives a whole lot easier to get our hands in here, I'm gonna take off this panel. This is like half a dozen flathead screws, self-tappers. Hopefully they come out. This panel should come off and I can get my hand in there and route this, take the old one out and route the new one over so we can get over to that block. Whew. Literally pulling this out. And the insulation is falling off in my face. Oh yeah. Sure, it's healthy too. All right, we got the wire harness pulled all the way through to the driver's side where we're gonna connect it to the block, and we're gonna finish pulling out what's left of this harness here. But it had an additional wire on there that I went and labeled. It went to the blinker. This I think was run after the fact, and I believe the driver's side is gonna have one as well. So because the main harness, we haven't got to that, or the engine side harness, it'll probably have the plugs in it for these blinkers, but for now, we need to at least know where these wires came from so they're not just hanging here and then tomorrow I go, what? So, just so you know, it's very good, always good to label things. You'll thank me later. All right, now that I got the front kind of squared away, with exception to the park and or front blinkers, we do have to figure out what we're gonna do as far as replacing those wires or getting new sockets and wires. But here's the rear harness. Pretty obvious here. We got one side breaker, blink, and it looks like we're gonna be soldering these. And then the other side, and the blue wire down there goes to the fuel tank sending unit, and then the long streak here is gonna run along the frame underneath and connect into the main harness. And then I think there's like an engine harness and a dashboard harness, but one thing at a time. Let's work the rear. All right, here we are in the back of the Jeepster, and right away I noticed in this harness that in the harness we have, the new one, it's 2-wire. Brake light, park light. That is it. Yeah, that's it. And fuel sending wire, which would be like, I think, down here. You got your ground, but you also have an additional wire, which would be, I'm guessing, reverse. I don't know if it even has reverse, so it may not be an issue, but this was definitely, somebody wired in reverse for this thing at some point. So I'm gonna have to call the customer because this harness definitely does not have reverse in it. So if it does need to happen, we're going to have to add another wire into this harness or run another wire or something completely separate. Yeah. Sometimes you find yourself in these situations where you gotta just get to where you gotta get to, and it requires you laying down, stretching, basically a contortionist. So we're not just mechanics. Update in here in the back of the car. I've got our new sending unit wire hooked up to the old one. We're going to use that underneath the car to pull the new one through, hopefully. We got our new harness temporarily kind of in here to the taillights. And again, we ended up with, there's a factory, or not factory, there's a reverse wire on each that this harness does not have. So I'm still waiting to get in contact with the customer to see what we're going to do about that, because I'm pretty sure he said there's no reverse lights. So this is what's left of the hacked up old harness that some people have taped and you name it. We're going to pull that down through, then we're going to feed our new harness down through there, tie in our fuel sending unit, and start running it along the frame to figure out where it's going to meet the main harness. And the taillights we're probably going to leave like this for now. I'll go out and show you what we did out there until we hear from the customer. All right, and it does come with new ground straps as well, so this will tie in inside the car. We got our brake and park lights as well on this thing, and actually he has a bulb out on this side, so we will have to address that as well, because remember, this is 6-volt. It's not a bulb that we would have. So same thing on this side. I'm gonna lift the car up and start pulling that harness through and running the new one. All right, I got the old harness pulled through. We'll have to put a grommet in there where it went through. They just had a piece of radiator hose or something, and this grossness all through and got rid of that. It did work to pull our sending unit wire using the old one, so that's right here ready to connect into our harness. We'll go back up inside the car now. I'll put a grommet in there, and then we'll feed the new harness down through and start feeding it back. And there's some other goodies under here too that, ooh boy, we may be cleaning up. All right, I had the right grommet size, so that's good. Better than that chunk of heater hose or whatever was on there. So good to have a stock of supplies. All right, under the car here, we gotta loop this up over the frame. There's a couple of hangers that it has to go in. They're actually still there. Connect our fuel sending unit. Then we'll start pulling back the old harness along the frame, which runs along there. You can see the additional wire they had on there as well as an additional one for this fuel pump that it doesn't connect to anything fuel-wise. So I guess we don't need that. All right, we're making our way, pulling the old harness out as we go and running the new one. So we got it all run up over the axle now into the factory clips as well. So that's pretty cool. The clips are actually coming apart, and it's letting us slide the new ones in. So grooming out wise, that part's not bad. All right, as you can see, the harness has brought us all the way to the front of the vehicle and ends right here, which I'm assuming the main harness is where this will all plug into. So now the old harness is right here on the floor. We can lower the car back down and pull it up over the fender. We can kind of see where that is connected to on this car's main wiring harness. All right, we got the park blinker assembly out of the Willys here, and as you can see, it's rough. Now he didn't get this, or it didn't come with the kit, so we're gonna try to make and build our own wire so it connects into that good harness. You don't want this whole new harness and then two old nasties right here. All right, I got the socket pulled apart here, and the wire cut back as far as I can cut it back and still get to some copper. And what we're gonna do is there's some scrap pieces they give us here. I'm gonna solder this onto the end with a connector that'll go into that factory harness, and then he'll be in good shape. There we have it. We got our new wires soldered on to the existing old socket. Heat shrunk. Got our ends on there, ready to plug into that factory replacement harness. That is gonna do the trick. One thing you're gonna want to make sure that you have on hand when you're doing wiring harnesses, wiring, or anything, is a whole assortment of connectors, whether it's solder connectors, it's crimp connectors, it's wire grommets, heat shrink. We got wire harness tape as well. You name it, you're probably gonna need it. Although you could buy a harness that says plug and play, you're gonna need it, I promise. All right, now we're getting into the engine side and or part of the main harness. And this is an absolute freaking nightmare. And there's additional wires that run into the car that I think those are the ones that ran over here to the park lights that I don't know why they're there. Hopefully the factory harness, when you put that in, takes care of that issue. And the one we ran from the back is right here, but it's tied into a bunch of stuff that I can't even tell what it goes to. So yeah, as you can see, the high beam switch is back there. That's on the floor, and I believe he has another one of those that we're gonna put in as well. Yeah, right here. So here is the high beam switch. So as long as that's right, and that's showing 3 wires, so let me come back over to here and see. Yeah, it does have 3 wires, so that's good. So maybe we'll unbolt the high beam switch and get that out of there so we can kind of pull some of this wiring up. All right, I think I'm gonna jump over to the overdrive harness here and start. See the big red wire? That starts on the starter motor. Then you have your positive and negative. It's a coil, and it goes back to the relays after that, and even to the ignition switch. It's like a lot to it, but I think we'll get this one done. It kind of starts on this side of the engine, down here low by the starter motor, work our way up here to the relays and connectors, and then I'm guessing it ties to the main harness or into the car itself. So yeah. All right, got Cletus down the shop. Shop Pop's joining us for a little bit, huh, bud? All right, so we've got the overdrive harness kind of laid in here. This lighting sucks, huh? Let's see about this. All right, and it's gonna go that way. Now this is, I'm guessing, this is the old overdrive harness that we're gonna pull back. The only wire that wasn't in our harness that has on this one is this one went to the coil negative, so I'm gonna go ahead and label that one because we don't know what that one goes. But this is the overdrive relay right here, that one, the one on the right. All right, we're under the car now. The kickdown switch, which is right under the throttle pedal, is tucked up in there, right up behind there. And the green and yellow wire pairs go to that, and you cannot get at the terminal, so you kind of have to take the switch out. And I see like a jam nut on there. I have no idea if that's gonna come out, but we're gonna try. And then we connect those, and then it looks like it continues on down. At least our harness does, to the overdrive switch. I don't know. We'll get there. All right, the kickdown switch, which is the electronic switch for the overdrive, is right there under the throttle pedal. And actually, after I sprayed it down, the nut came off. So we should be able to pull that switch down through the bottom and then change all those wire terminals and put it back up after. That'll make it a lot easier. All right, here's our switch, which now comes right out through that hole. Easy as that, right? And now we'd be able to bring it down, I think, at least close to here. And I'm hoping these are labeled, and it does not look like they are labeled at all. Oh, great. Yeah, so that sucks. Yeah, that sucks. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blow off the back of that, hit it with a little brass wire brush. If we can't clean it up, hopefully there's something labeled. All right, since nothing's labeled on the switch, and I just proved it, I'm gonna go ahead and probably test it with the multimeter. I think it's just an on-off switch, period, a monetary switch. That is, this is pushed in, like 2 and 2 make contacts, like it's one of the same. And then, so I'm gonna ring it out too, as far as which one goes to what. They got some old labels here that was solenoid, so we know that this wire goes to the solenoid terminal, so we can kind of narrow it down by that and get our wires connected that way, as well as checking the switch itself to make sure it functions like I think it does. I believe I figured it out. It's basically the bottom is a green, and then a yellow, and then a green, and then a yellow. And I just ran it back to what should be the green terminal back here, and then up to the wire that connects to them, so green, yellow. And I think we have it right. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to test this until he goes cruising in the summer, and we may have to make a change on the wires, but I think it's gonna work. All right, I made our connections on the switch down here, and it would have been impossible to do up there. We got it labeled as to ringing it out what the color should be, and then now we just got the connections to make down here, over here onto this. I can't remember what it's called. This rig right here, there's 3 more wires to connect. And then we'll connect the, remount the kickdown switch, and this old harness can come out. Cletus is doing his best to help by not chewing on the wires, right, buddy? The old wires. All right, we got our switch back in, our kickdown switch under the throttle pedal, and now, you can't really see in there probably, but there's one little flathead screw the end of our overdrive harness that we're gonna put a ringlet on this end of the wire and get that connected, and that'll be the end of the overdrive harness. Then it's onto the main harness. Have you seen under there? Like, I don't know if you can see, but there's a mess. And there's a whole... This blinker assembly is not original, so I'm not even sure how that's going to come to play. All right, so I think we'll call it a night tonight. What do you think, Cletus? Dinner? The dog loves food. Like, you say dinner and you say food, and that's all he's going to talk about. Yeah, I talk to my dog. But anyway, I'm hungry. We're going to call it. We got the headlight harness in. We got the rear harness in. There's still some work to do. Like I said, little things. We got to find out about those reverse lights. And then we wired up the overdrive harness. Now, what's left is some short pieces, a few miscellaneous wires, and then the main harness. So tomorrow, Steve's coming over. We'll get started bright and early and dig into that main harness. And the main harness ties into the rear harness. It gets into the gauges, and it comes out under the hood. So it's gonna suck, but that's okay. We got this. Next morning now, we got the heat going because it's all of like 5 degrees outside when I got here this morning. And I got reinforcements, so Steve's here. He's helping us out with the wiring today. And now that I've got the overdrive harness in from last night, I got an answer from the customer on the tail light, so there's no reverse light circuit. There's not one going in it, and there's also not one in the harness. I can button the tail lights up now. I got a couple replacement bulbs for it as well. And then Steve is starting in the front. We have the main harness now laid out, and we know that this is going to go all the way to the headlight block that we were working on yesterday. Then we got a couple other circuits. We're going to tie into the high beam switch down there, the horn circuit, and then the harness is going to dip down inside. This car didn't have factory blinkers in it. However, the harness that he got does have the wiring for the blinkers in it, we think. So that should be all incorporated. So Steve's going to start at the front. I'm going to button up the back. Be right back. All right, here's another example of why this car probably shouldn't have been driven. There's some scary ass copper showing. All right, we're under the dash of the car. We've got the main harness pulled through the firewall. It's actually a piece of this harness right here is going to go back out the firewall, back into the engine compartment. But the main run comes in here to this straight up spaghetti disaster. I mean, this is ugly. And we have to sort that all out. Well, 30 minutes. That right there is our gauges and everything under the dash. Couldn't even tell what was what and went where. This is going to be interesting. All right, I got all the gauges and everything right here. We got the main wire harness coming in to the Jeep over here, up over there. We got a section now going back out where Steve's working. And then you got the main harness right here that we're gonna tag team. He's gonna read stuff off to me and get everything connected, hopefully, back up under here. And then we have a couple other circuits we gotta figure out, because I don't know if they're part of it or not. This thing has a heater on it. Don't know if it works. It has a radio in it. Don't know if it works. And it has the aftermarket and or blinker set that we have to hook up as well. So we'll kind of get to that stuff after, but I'm mainly concerned with getting the main wire and harness itself hooked up. So hopefully with the color-coded stuff, we can get this stuff figured out. Occasionally you gotta be a contortionist to get like your tools where they need to go under this dash. It is actually as fun as it looks like it is. It's that much fun. Nope. All right, so I think we've got most of the main harness in to where it needs to be. And I think we narrowed it down so that these are going to be our blinker wires. Because remember, the car didn't come with that, but yet the harness has it in there. And I think we're going to tie it to these wires here, but not positive. And there's a few other wires under here that feed the radio. This feeds the blinkers up here and or hazards. This feeds like this light over here. Then there's another light over there, which I don't think even worked or ever did. So yeah, still got a little ways to go, and we got to figure out the heater circuit as well. But we're getting there. All right, we just wired in the new dimmer switch. So that's your high beam, low beam switch on the floor. What's left of this floor, but now, nice. He's got high beam, low beam. All right, so I think we've got the majority of the harness hooked up. We're gonna do some troubleshooting. There's some final connections we gotta make, but in the meantime, Steve's got a few terminals to tighten up on here, and then I'm gonna change the battery cables because the customer did pick up new battery cables, positive and negative, These are pretty old and brittle. A lot of corrosion, so a lot of resistance in there. So we're gonna get rid of these. I'll change those out. Then we're gonna connect our battery, turn the key on, and see what happens. All right, we just changed the battery cables, and this is the negative. And as you can see, this is only a 6-volt system. That baby was working hard to push anything through that. Oh, Jesus. I think we're to the point where we got our new battery cables on. We can connect the cable. We'll be ready, have the key on inside, and make sure, start testing circuits as far as that goes. Probably have the fire extinguisher here too. All right, so update. We have the lights working. Partially worked when we first started it, or we first tried it. We haven't got to starting it yet. And come to find out, we had some wires backwards or flip-flopped or something on the high beam switch on the floor. And then we got all the lights working, and we had no brake lights. Again, this car had some different wiring and whatever in it. So we were able to figure out, needless to say, which wire we had to get to tie the brake light circuit in, which feeds in through this blinker switch, believe it or not, which is now working. So we now have blinkers, we got hazards, we got horn. The only thing we don't have is start, which we haven't tried yet in my defense. So, all right.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, everything works now. We literally just started this thing. It fired right up once I figured out how to start it with the manual engaging solenoid, which he did tell me about, but it's kind of foreign for me. Plus I don't have a seat, so I'm sitting on the ground. Then I still have some grooming to do and to wire the blower motor in, because it does work. I just tested it. The harness doesn't come with any of that, so we're gonna put some new wiring on that as well, and then finish grooming everything out. But for now, when Steve's ready, I'm gonna go ahead and start it. I'm gonna try to start this thing here. Here we go. Ready? Push the clutch in. It actually runs really well. I might have to throttle it up.
No, it's going up.
It is?
And it went up as soon as you did that.
Okay, perfect. So it's charging as well. All right, it's late. Steve and I got the electrical straightened out. Literally everything works that we know of, like all headlights, horn, brake lights, blinkers, it's all working now. The car starts, it runs, everything seems to be working, it's charging. So that's a huge win. Kind of foreign territory as far as tearing into this wiring harness. As you can see, there was literally nothing even recognizable anymore. So had to really put our heads together and get this thing figured out. But it goes to show you, you plan stuff out, you write stuff down wherever it happens to be, but you write it down. I still got some wire grooming to do, so I'm gonna groom that stuff out this week, and so we can get this back to the customer. But I think this was a good like this is what you can kind of get into. This is an old vehicle when you're replacing a wiring harness. Now this is like an old 6-volt, so you could have upgraded to 12-volt. He could still upgrade to 12-volt later, because this wiring is capable of running the 12-volt system as well. He'd have to change a few other things. Now with that being said, this is a great time to hit that like and subscribe, because, well, guess what? It doesn't cost you nothing, and it benefits us, a lot. Just the likes and the subscribe. So tell us what you think, what you like, what you didn't like. Now hold those. What you want to see next time. Anyway. All right, so in a nutshell, what did we do today? Over the past 4 days, what did we accomplish? We took this 1950 Jeepster, this all original wiring harness that was literally down to bare copper. I mean, this thing was straight up dangerous to be driving around, and brought it up to, I don't want to say the 20th century, we brought it up to the standard, still 6-volt, but all new wiring harness, front to back. We used the Kaiser Williams wiring harness, rewired this entire car. So things are working in this car that weren't working. It's no longer dangerous to drive. I'm honestly surprised he didn't have more issues than he did. I think he was pretty lucky. But at the end of the day, we got a cool old rig back on the road, so he can go cruising in it. Now, he's not building this for shows. He actually drives it and cruises in it. He's 80-something years old. I used to work with him. His name is Ralph, and he is one cool dude.